You hear it before you see it. The morning news humming through the kitchen. Another record high, markets strong, inflation cooling, confidence returning. The anchors smile, the numbers rise, and for a moment, everything feels familiar, safe even. You pour your coffee, nodding along. Maybe the worst is behind us. Maybe this is what recovery looks like. Stability, at last. The story sounds right. It always does, right before it isn't. Because that's the trap, isn't it? The moment it finally feels safe to believe again is usually the moment belief becomes dangerous. Calm isn't the end of risk, it's often the disguise it wears. And when everyone relaxes at once, something quiet begins to shift beneath the floorboards. Look closer. It's the same pattern every time. The same few names holding the market aloft. The same applause for the same numbers. The same confidence repeating itself like a prayer. We call it growth, but it looks more like concentration. We call it progress, but it feels rehearsed. And while the crowd celebrates, the quiet ones are doing something different. They're not chasing what's shining. They're stepping into what's silent. They're not buying stories. They're studying behavior. Because the smartest investors know, markets don't reward agreement. They punish it. So what if all this optimism isn't proof that the future is bright, but that the cycle is full? What if the calm you're hearing in the news is not the sound of safety returning, but of risk resetting? Quietly, patiently, beneath the surface. Because when everyone believes the same story, the story stops being true. And that's exactly where the smartest investors begin to listen. Every generation believes it has learned from the last. They remember the crashes, the panic, the late-night news. They build new rules, new safeguards, proof, they say, that the world has matured. But each safeguard creates new confidence, and every confidence breeds a new blind spot. The cycle doesn't repeat, it evolves. The language changes, the optimism updates its wardrobe, but the melody underneath stays the same. You can see it in the calm of commentators, in policymakers' certainty, in the upward slope of charts no one dares to question. Progress becomes a story we sell to ourselves. And like any story, it asks for belief, just enough belief to stop us from asking the wrong questions. The modern economy thrives on that belief. It rewards participation, not understanding. Your portfolio grows, your home rises in value, your screen glows green. But behind every comforting number hides a transfer of risk, from the few who study it to the many who don't. Stability doesn't come from safety, it comes from awareness. And awareness fades fastest when things appear stable. Buy and hold, they say. Trust the trend. It sounds wise, it sounds patient. But patience without awareness becomes complacency, and complacency becomes fuel. The system doesn't need panic. It needs attention. Every feed, every headline is designed to shorten your focus. Because the shorter it gets, the easier you are to predict. Predictability feeds profit, and profit keeps the illusion alive. So people stop investing. They start reacting. They trade signals instead of value, motion instead of meaning. The smartest investors see the pattern. They know this isn't a market built to inform you. It's built to harvest your urgency. The illusion works because it feels democratic. Anyone can buy, anyone can trade. Technology makes it effortless, and ease feels like progress. But beneath the noise, ownership has never been more concentrated. A handful of companies steer direction. A handful of funds steer sentiment. You think you're acting freely, but your motion has already been priced in. That's the paradox of modern investing. Freedom wrapped in automation. You can choose anything, as long as it's already popular. You can believe in growth, as long as you don't ask who benefits. And when everyone moves the same way, safety becomes the most dangerous word in finance. There is no safety in numbers when everyone holds the same position. Diversification becomes decoration. Control becomes illusion. The smartest investors aren't immune. They just notice sooner. They watch where attention gathers and step aside. They measure how fragile optimism becomes once it turns collective. When conviction becomes chorus, they prepare for the exit. They know value isn't what something costs. It's how deeply people believe it can't fall. That belief, unquestioned, unanimous, is the truest signal of a market peak, because markets aren't built on data. They're built on emotion, dressed as logic. Every bubble is a story told too beautifully to doubt. And right now, the story is simple. Technology will save everything. Growth will continue. The future will pay for the present. But every new era sounds like the last, just with better branding. They're not pessimists. They're historians. They understand that wealth shifts in silence, long before headlines catch up. When a strategy becomes universal, it stops being a strategy. It becomes exposure. The market doesn't punish ignorance. It punishes certainty. When everyone knows what works, the system adapts to make it stop working. That's not conspiracy. It's design. Every time the average investor grows comfortable, volatility finds a door. Equilibrium demands imbalance. Profit demands victims. And so the cycle turns. Optimism expands, risk hides, and old warnings fade, until something small breaks, something temporary, and belief rushes out like air from a cracked hull. The smartest investors don't know the date. They don't need to. They understand the anatomy of illusion. They know every ending begins the same way, with too many people standing on the same side of the boat, certain it can't tip. That's why they're doing the opposite right now, not for drama, not for pride, but because they know perfection in finance isn't strength, it's exhaustion. And exhaustion always comes before collapse. You were taught that markets reflect reason. That price is the collective wisdom of countless rational minds. But what if the market isn't a mirror of logic? What if it's a mirror of emotion amplified by machines? Every click, every hesitation, every trade is captured, analyzed, and sold back to you. Your curiosity becomes data. Your fear becomes motion. And that motion is monetized, not to inform you, but to predict you. Once, markets moved because people decided. Now they move because algorithms anticipate what people will decide. The illusion of control remains, but the choreography has changed. You still feel like the dancer, but you're really the rhythm. Algorithms have learned something ancient. Fear spreads faster than logic, and hope endures longer than pain. They don't care who wins or loses. They care about motion. Up or down, it's all liquidity. It's all harvest. The game has evolved. You're no longer investing in companies. You're investing in collective behavior. Momentum replaces meaning. Noise replaces narrative. Belief itself has become a product. The smartest investors see this not as corruption, but revelation. Technology doesn't distort the market. It exposes it. It shows how little of our decision-making was ever rational, how much of our strategy was emotion dressed in math. Beneath all the algorithms lies something simple. Humans trying to outsmart each other while pretending they're not emotional. The charts are mathematical. The motives are not. Every innovation, every shortcut, every new paradigm leads to the same destination, overconfidence. The tools change, the psychology doesn't. We build models to escape uncertainty, but they create new fragility. We mistake automation for immunity, then wonder why the same storms return under different names. Wealth, power, and psychology are never separate. They orbit one another like planets bound by invisible gravity. Money follows belief. Belief follows narrative. Narrative follows power. And power writes the story. To see the next shift, don't study balance sheets. Watch the story change. Listen to the fears whispered in boardrooms, the promises printed on front pages. Markets don't crash on data. They crash on doubt. And doubt is the invisible hand that resets everything. But doubt itself isn't dangerous. What's dangerous is when systems and investors refuse to feel it. When every risk is insured, every loss temporary, every correction a buying opportunity. That's when humility disappears. And without humility, intelligence turns blind. The smartest investors know this. They've watched success become identity, wealth become mirror, confidence become religion. Every empire, financial, political, or cultural, ends not from attack, but from certainty. And we live in that certainty now. A global faith in endless progress, in innovation without consequence, in data without wisdom. Technology gave us precision, but not perspective. More information, less understanding. We know the movements, not the motives. We've mapped the noise, but not the silence. So while the crowd chases clarity, the wise look for fog. They buy when stories die. They invest where no one is watching. Because value hides in discomfort, not in applause. Ask yourself, why must humans always believe in endless growth? Why is balance mistaken for failure? Because growth is not just an economic model, it's an emotional addiction. It tells us we're improving, that chaos means something, that we're not just surviving but advancing. But evolution isn't always upward. Sometimes it's inward. Sometimes progress means restraint. The smartest investors have learned this through scars, not books. They've seen every miracle, .com, real estate, crypto, AI, turn into a monument of blind belief. Not because belief is evil, but because it's blind. Every system built on faith eventually demands proof. And when proof doesn't come, belief collapses inward. Crashes don't start from panic, they start from disappointment. When the story no longer fits the facts, the system rewrites itself through pain. So these investors wait. They're not prophets, they're custodians of patience. They don't predict the future. They prepare for the return of truth. They know truth travels slower than hype, but it always arrives. When everyone demands growth, the most valuable asset becomes restraint. When everyone seeks certainty, the edge lies in doubt. When everyone looks for clarity, opportunity hides in confusion. Markets aren't built on truth, they're built on belief in truth. And when belief becomes unanimous, truth has already left the room. So, maybe the real question isn't what the smartest investors are doing, but why everyone else keeps doing the same thing. Why we need to believe someone knows how it ends. Why we choose comfort over awareness. Because the market is a reflection of us, our vanity, our fear of missing out, our hope that this time will be different. But deep down, you know, it never is. The system doesn't trick us. We trick ourselves. It never begins with panic. It begins with silence, a hesitation in the crowd, a chart that stops rising, a headline that sounds less certain than yesterday. No one calls it the top. They never do. They call it temporary weakness, healthy correction, buy the dip. But beneath the calm, something shifts. The rhythm of belief slows. The first to notice aren't the analysts. They're the quiet ones. They don't rush to sell. They simply stop buying. They grow still while everyone else keeps talking. Then the noise falters. Anchors speak faster. Experts fill the air, explaining what no one asked. And every reassurance begins to sound like denial. That's when you know. The calm is gone. Markets fall long before the charts do. They fall first in confidence, then in conversation, and only later in price. The data always lags the emotion. By the time numbers admit the truth has already moved on. When it happens, it feels sudden, but it isn't. Every collapse is a delayed consequence of denial. Every panic is optimism collecting its debt. Yet, in that unraveling, there's something merciful. The sound of illusion breaking, the return of gravity, the return of reality. For a moment, everything becomes honest again. Assets are no longer symbols. They're things. Companies are not stories. They're structures. And people remember that value is what survives when belief disappears. The smartest investors don't celebrate. They observe. Because every fall isn't destruction. It's renewal. The market remembering what it is. A mechanism, not a miracle. But this awakening isn't only about money. It's about us. What breaks in the market also breaks in the mind. The same forces that inflate prices inflate egos. When the system resets, it isn't punishing us. It's revealing us. Look closer. This isn't about stocks or bubbles. It's about how easily we trade awareness for comfort. How quickly we forget that risk never vanishes, it only hides. Nothing is truly safe, not even certainty. And so the cycle ends, as it always does. People searching for meaning in the ashes. asking how no one saw it coming, when everyone did, because believing felt better than knowing. From that quiet wreckage, clarity returns. The fog lifts. The few who waited move again, not with greed, but with grace. They don't predict, they prepare, they don't hope, they understand. As the world rebuilds its stories, they already know the melody, belief, excess, denial, reset. And again, the question echoes. When everyone believes the same thing, will you follow or remember? Because this was never about timing or money. It was about awareness. The smartest investors aren't predicting the future. They're refusing to forget the past. They've seen the pattern in markets, in power, in human nature, and they know the only real edge isn't information, it's perspective. So, when the next wave rises, you'll have a choice. Join the noise, chase safety in numbers, or step back quietly and watch as the crowd builds its next illusion. The camera pulls away. The graphs flatten into stillness. And for a moment, you see it, the rhythm beneath the chaos, the truth behind the noise. The smartest investors are doing the opposite right now, not because they know what's next, but because they understand what always returns. Silence, awareness, reality coming home.